Right now, someone in your life is lying to you. You probably already know it. Not because you have evidence, not because you caught them, but because something small doesn't add up. A story with a detail that shifted slightly. An answer that came a half second too fast. A moment where the face said something the words didn't. You felt it before you could name it. That feeling, that quiet, precise, almost animal awareness that something in the signal is wrong, is not intuition in the vague modern sense of the word.
It is a detection system that your species has been refining for at least 300,000 years. And in the world it was built for, catching a liar was not a social skill. It was survival.
Picture a camp 40,000 years ago. 12 people, maybe 15. Every one of them depended on every other one for food, for safety, for the margin between making it through winter and not. In that world, information was the most valuable resource that existed. Not food, not fire, information. Which direction do the animals move? Where's the water source? Is the person walking toward our camp a threat or a stranger looking for trade? Every decision the group made, every hunt, every migration, every alliance ran on information. And information required trust. The assumption that when someone in your group told you something, they were telling you what they actually knew. A single liar in a group of 12 people didn't just create a social problem. They corrupted the entire information network the group depended on to survive.
Here's what evolutionary biologist Robert Trivers at Rutgers University called the central paradox of social living. Cooperation is the most powerful survival strategy a social species can adopt, but cooperation requires trust, and trust creates an opportunity, because in a world where everyone cooperates, the individual who defects, who takes without giving, who lies while others tell the truth, gains an enormous short-term advantage. So as cooperation evolved, deception evolved right alongside it. And as deception evolved, detection evolved in response. Your brain is the product of hundreds of thousands of years of that arms race.
Psychologist Paul Ekman spent decades at the University of California, San Francisco studying the microexpressions, the involuntary sub-second facial movements that leak genuine emotion before the conscious mind can suppress them. What he found was that lying is cognitively expensive. When a person lies, the brain is doing several things simultaneously, constructing a false narrative, monitoring whether the listener believes it, suppressing the true information, and managing the physical performance of deception. The cognitive load is enormous. And under that load, the face leaks. A microexpression of fear before the confident smile, a flash of contempt before the concerned nod, the eyes moving in a direction that doesn't match the story being told. These signals last less than a fifth of a second. Untrained modern people catch them at rates barely above chance. But Ekman's research also found something striking. Certain groups, people who had spent years in high-stakes social environments where reading others was essential to survival, showed dramatically higher detection rates. Your ancestors lived in exactly that environment, every day, for their entire lives.
Anthropologist Robin Dunbar at Oxford has argued that gossip, the sharing of social information about third parties, evolved primarily as a lie detection and reputation management tool. In a small group with no writing, no records, no external authority to verify claims, the only way to know whether someone could be trusted was to build a constantly updated, collectively maintained map of every person's behavior. Every member of the group was a node in that network. Every interaction was data. Every story told about someone when they weren't present was a calibration of the trust map. In a group of 15 people who had known each other since birth, who had watched each other in every possible situation, hunger,
Threat, abundance, conflict.
There was almost nowhere to hide. The liar wasn't operating against a single person. They were operating against a distributed intelligence network that had been building a picture of them since the day they arrived.
Here's where it gets more precise. Because the ancient tribe didn't just detect lies passively. They created conditions that made lies almost impossible to sustain. Anthropologist Christopher Boehm, whose research on hunter-gatherer societies we visited before, documented that small-scale bands maintained what he called radical transparency, not as a policy or a value, but as a structural reality. You slept where everyone could see you. You ate where everyone could see you. You came back from wherever you went, and everyone could see whether you were telling the truth about where you had been. Because in a territory the group knew intimately, inconsistencies were immediately visible.
The liar in the ancient world wasn't dealing with a skeptical individual trying to catch them. They were dealing with a group of 15 people who collectively knew every path, every water source, every likely location of every animal in their territory, and who would immediately notice if your story didn't match the landscape.
But here's the layer of this story that almost nobody talks about. Because even in a world this transparent, people still lied. They lied about where they had been, about what they had taken, about what they had seen, about what they felt, and what they intended. The same cognitive architecture that made humans brilliant cooperators, the ability to model other people's minds, to predict their behavior, to understand what they wanted and needed, also made humans uniquely capable
Of sophisticated, targeted deception.
You can only lie convincingly to someone whose mind you can accurately model. The same capacity, the same cognitive tool, used in opposite directions. So what happened when the lie was discovered? The answer depended on the lie. Boehm's research across dozens of hunter-gatherer societies found that not all deceptions were treated equally. Small lies, the kind that protected feelings, maintained peace, softened a difficult truth, were largely tolerated.
The lies that triggered the full weight of group response were the ones that touched survival. Hiding food in a world where everyone's caloric margin was thin. Falsely claiming to have scouted a territory that hadn't been scouted. Concealing information about a threat. These were not moral violations in the way modern ethics frames them. They were operational failures. The equivalent of a broken tool in a system that depended on every
Tool working. The response began, almost always, with gossip. Dunbar's research on the function of gossip in small-scale societies makes clear that this was not idle chatter. It was systematic information sharing. The lie, once suspected, was circulated through the group's conversation network with extraordinary speed. In a group of 15 people sleeping within arm's reach of each other, information moved faster than any modern communication system.
By the time the liar woke up the next morning, everyone already knew. Not because anyone had confronted them, not because there had been a formal accusation, because 15 people had talked, compared notes, and arrived collectively at a conclusion that no single person could have reached alone.
Then came the testing. Boehm documented a consistent pattern across hunter-gatherer societies. Once someone was suspected of deception, the group began quietly creating situations designed to reveal inconsistency. Questions asked from different angles, at different times, by different people, so that a rehearsed false story would eventually contradict itself under the accumulated pressure of being retold across multiple conversations, across multiple places.
A request for the liar to demonstrate or repeat something they had claimed. A skill, a location, a piece of knowledge that would be immediately verifiable by people who actually knew the territory. The ancient tribe didn't need a courtroom. They had something more sophisticated. A slow, distributed, multi-person verification process that a practiced liar could sustain for days, but almost never for weeks. And when the lie finally collapsed, the first response was rarely confrontation in the way we might imagine. It was withdrawal. The liar found that people stopped including them in certain conversations, stopped sharing certain information with them, stopped sitting as close at the fire.
These were not dramatic gestures. They were quiet, precise adjustments in the group's behavior. Each one small enough to be deniable, but collectively unmistakable. The liar was being shown, without being told, that the group knew. And they were being given a narrow window to repair it.
Most people in that window confessed, not because they were noble, because the alternative was worse. Boehm's research found that the groups that maintained strong social cohesion were the ones that created pathways for acknowledgement and repair, rituals and informal processes through which a person who had violated trust could demonstrate, through subsequent behavior, that they could be trusted again.
The confession and the correction mattered, not because the group had forgiven the moral dimension of the lie, but because the group needed to know whether the information network was operational again. Could they trust what this person told them now? That was the only question that ultimately mattered.
And the ones who didn't confess, who maintained the lie, or lied again to cover the first lie, or showed no acknowledgement that the group had discovered them, they followed the same path we've seen before. Gossip became public ridicule. Withdrawal became exclusion. Exclusion became exile. In a world where exile meant almost certain death, the few who reached that point had made a calculation that the group eventually stopped trying to change.
Your brain is the product of every generation that successfully navigated that system. The ancestors who were caught lying and repaired it. The ancestors who were good enough at detecting lies that they were never significantly deceived. The ancestors who understood, at a level below conscious thought, that trust was the architecture that held everything together, and that damaging it had consequences that moved faster than any individual could manage.
That quiet feeling you had, the one at the very beginning of this, before any evidence, before any confrontation, before anything you could point to and name, that wasn't imagination. That was 30,000 years of distributed intelligence running in the oldest parts of your brain, telling you that something in the signal was off. It has been right before, more times than you know.